Welcome back to the Criticizer of Conlangs with your host James Pigeon, and today the episode is on Noniquinedu et duquinesep. Noniquinedu et duquinesep is an artline created in 2024 by me. I want to preface this by saying that Noniquinedu et duquinesep is one of, if not my absolute worst conlangs, and the realization that I only admitted it this recently bringeth immense shame. I regret making this. So, to get to our introduction to the language, I did make some lore surrounding its world building, and you're in for a treat, because this is in fact the only lore I ever made for NED. Quote, the isolated Roman fort of Noam Ladinum in Hispania was cut off from the storied road network after a catastrophic flood. The officers developed a new society, with the populace speaking vulgar Latin and eventually Spanish. However, the elites made a new language that commoners would have to dedicate years to learning to achieve even conversational fluency, because one had to be very quick with arithmetic to speak it. This language of the court and literature, taught to nobles from the age of 6, is Noniquinedu et duquinesep, literally, language we speak. Though it was never spoken natively, the tongue is still being used in the L2 manner by some extremely out-of-touch Spanish aristocrats. So yes, NED is a conlang in universe. This relieves it of the burden of being naturalistic, which I assure you it is not. However, the text also states that NED was/is spoken fluently and used as a literary language for hundreds if not thousands of years, and that it was created by Roman soldiers. So, the worst episode to date of this show is almost definitely number 3, Ishkrin, the only artline ever reviewed here until now. I found that the problem with that was I didn't have any goals or standards to judge it against, as opposed to an international or engineered language where the standards of judgment are more inherent. So I'm going to try to actually find an angle to judge NED by, and I'm going to judge that by how well it fits this lore and lives up to the hype presented. Let's get into it. The phonology of NED is very simple, having only 9 consonants and 5 vowels, for a total of 14 phonemes, and the reason for that will become clear in the phonotactics section. The consonant inventory itself is very standard. I know it's supposed to be a conlang in universe, but this is honestly a pretty naturalistic inventory featuring an alveolar series and a plosive series. And if anyone's reminded of Latin, that's for good reason, as the conlang was created by native Latin speakers in the lore. Also, a side note for the readings going forward, I put the rhotic as the tap in my table, but I know that I almost always read it as the trill, so I'm going to use the trill. The vowels are the standard 5 vowel system, again, all in Latin. The main interesting thing here is that they're all long vowels. So, the vowels are all long, but there are no short vowels to contrast with them. So does it really matter? I can't see the vowel gemination being preserved for hundreds of years when it's not even phonemic, so yeah, definitely very unrealistic. Now the phonotactics. NED has 24 allowed word segmentals. Not types of syllables, but literally 24 different syllables and syllable groupings which are permitted to be combined into words. There are 9 taken from the Latin numbers, and then the other 9 are just the first 9 but with a vowel or consonant at the end. If the previous syllable ends in a vowel, the next must start with a consonant and vice versa. So if you want to combine tree and un, you couldn't make triun. You have to add an x and make trixun. The other 6 are just grammatical particles and the negative marker. The orthography is just standard Latin, which makes sense for the people in the story who were supposed to be Roman soldiers. Now, the reason there are only 18 syllables is because of how the grammar and vocabulary works, which we'll get right into now. So, yeah, this is the weirdest and most interesting part of the language. Also, possibly the dumbest, but I'll get to that at the end. Basically, each word gets assigned a number. For example, the first person singular pronoun is given the number 18, and you know how to pronounce it because the digits 1 and 8 are un and oct, so 18 is pronounced as unoct. Kind of a cool idea, but yeah, the grammar sells. Let's just walk through an example to illustrate. Let's say you want to translate the sentence, the cat eats the dog. Well, the numerical values for cat, dog, and to eat are 8,345, 4,937, and 5,213, respectively. Then to find the sentence, we subtract the object from the subject and add the particle 8 and then the verb, unchanged. Our new value then becomes 3,408, 5,213. If we pronounce this according to the syllables, we get our sentence. Triquati nulok duquine duxunatri. There are then numerous grammatical particles we can apply to change the tense and add more clauses. Anyway, this subject-object-8-verb algorithm can be applied to any sentence and then pronounced according to the syllable conversion. Proper nouns are just approximated phonetically. The number system is also pretty goofy. 1 through 9 are just the numbers, but after that, you actually have to pronounce the digits. So 400 is quata nulla null. Also, attentive viewers might now notice the absolutely gigantic thing that sinks this language completely. Now for the spoken sample. Sepe triki quinuna docto septro trico nonitrixio tet quat. Du noniquanti no antrinu led quine duxunatri quo quatidu tri et octo tri sepe sexa quin. Sepe sex nonuna quine sex nuna quat et octo sep in cuxuna quine cu du quine sex. So, you may have noticed that this language has been a bit short on criticism so far. That's because I was saving it until now. Allow me to rip into this mistake. This language is, frankly, incredibly stupid. For one, the grammar makes it completely impractical to speak or read. How would you know that a number was reached by a certain subject minus a certain object? It's nearly impossible. 16 could just as easily be the result of 10 minus 6, 100 minus 94, or -1 minus -17. Also, why would Latin speakers use 8 for a grammatical function when it means and in Latin? This would just be confusing and unnatural. Also, the story itself is unrealistic. Why would the Romans just give up a fort because one road link got severed? And why would the soldiers just agree to fund a new society there instead of, trying to go back to their loved ones? Did they bring any farmers or masons? Lastly, the absolute dumbest element of all, why, even though the grammar makes it impossible for this to ever be spoken fluently, the whole thing makes it impossible to ever happen. Europeans did not have Arabic numerals until 500 years after the fall of Rome. This whole system of digits that the entire language is based on makes zero sense with Roman numerals, which they would be using. I'll say that again. The entire language is dependent on the concept of base 10 positional notation, specifically with Arabic numerals that the people in the story at the beginning would have never heard of. The language is thus rendered a complete joke. In the end, Noniquinedu et duquinesep is the worst art lang and language in general I reviewed so far. I regret making it. Leave any suggestions in the comments below, and stay tuned for next week, when the episode will be on Terruine.